The opinions expressed by ResusLogix or Dr. Montano do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of his employer, past or present.
Okay, so in the world of trauma care, the pelvic binder is basically a superhero, right? For someone with a really bad pelvic fracture, this thing is a frontline, life-saving tool. But what if that superhero has a bit of a dark side? So what does it do? Well, its job is pretty simple, really. It just squeezes the pelvis together. This shrinks the space inside, helps stabilize the broken bones, and this is the big one, it stops massive internal bleeding. It's an amazing, simple tool that can literally be the difference between life and death. But here's the kicker. What if that simple squeeze, in just the wrong situation, could actually do more harm than good? And that's the big question we're digging into, because it turns out this device isn't the one-size-fits-all solution we might think it is. All right, so let's get right into it. The first major issue, slapping a binder on the wrong kind of injury. You see, not all pelvic fractures are the same, and for some of them, squeezing inward is the absolute last thing you should be doing. And look, the medical literature is super clear about a couple of these. We're talking absolute, no questions asked contraindications. If you got an open pelvic fracture, where bone is actually exposed, or a fracture just in the hip socket, the acetabulum, a binder is a definite no-go, period. But the real surprise here is that the danger goes way beyond those really specific cases. It actually applies to some pretty common injuries. So picture this. Someone gets hit from the side. A lateral compression fracture. The force has already crushed the pelvis inward, so does it make any sense to then wrap a binder around it and squeeze it inward even more? It sounds completely counterintuitive because it is. And this isn't just a hunch. The data backs it up big time. One study found that in a staggering 61%, let that sink in, 61% of these lateral compression injuries, putting on a pelvic binder actually made the fracture worse. Just think about that. More often than not, for one of the most common types of pelvic fractures, the tool we're using to help is actually causing more damage. Okay, so it's not just about the what kind of fracture it is. It's also about the who and the how. The specific patient and the way the binder is actually applied can open up a whole new can of worms. Take elderly patients, for example. Their skin is often much more fragile, right? Well, the intense pressure from a binder can easily lead to really nasty pressure sores, or even skin necrosis, where the tissue dies. And then you have pregnant women. If that binder is put on just a little bit wrong, it can squeeze the uterus and cut off vital blood flow to the baby. The stakes are incredibly high. And that brings us to what is probably the single biggest mistake people make, where they put the thing. Look, a pelvic binder has to be centered right over the greater trochanters. Those are the hard, bony knobs you can feel on the sides of your hips. But what happens all the time? People put it way too high, up on the soft part of the belly, and that's not just useless, it's dangerous. It can actually damage internal organs. It's a huge, huge mistake, and it happens way too often. So when you start to stack all this up, the wrong injury, the wrong patient, the wrong technique, suddenly this simple decision to use a binder looks a whole lot more complicated, doesn't it? And it's no surprise that it's forcing a lot of people in the medical world to take a step back and really rethink this. And this isn't just some academic debate. The National Association of EMS Physicians, NAEMSP, they laid it out pretty bluntly in a recent position statement. They basically said the pre-hospital use of these devices should be reconsidered. Why? A lack of proven benefit and, get this, the potential for iatrogenic injuries. That's a medical term for harm that's actually caused by the treatment itself. So what's the bottom line here? It leaves us asking a really important question. This simple tool, this thing we thought was a straightforward lifesaver, is it way more complicated than we ever give it credit for? It really proves that in medicine, sometimes the most powerful skill is knowing not just what to do, but more importantly, when not to do it.